Whoever comes along, sometimes I'll go up to whoever's on the street and I'll say, here, have this, just for the sheer sake of excitement and just to see them respond when they open it up and have a look inside.
Illustrating high school textbooks, phys ed books, maths books, stuff like that, which can be a bit boring, but it's a bit of a challenge, and I'm really sick of drawing bicycles because every now and then I've got to draw a picture of a bicycle, and the one thing I hate drawing is a bicycle.
See over there? A little red dot. It's a little jellyfish.
Yeah. Tell us about your house.
House? Well, it's still there after the fires yesterday, so out in Furniture Gully, yeah. I think living there is actually, like, because it's all forest and things like that, it really suits the environment of most of my stories that I want to do.
Can you hear anything? Oh, the mic's here, isn't it?
No,
G'day. Bug and Stump came about, Mark and I met at uni. I had been drawing Stump since I was 14. Mark had been drawing Bug since he was 7. We were both introduced to each other by a mutual friend on the basis that we could both draw, and therefore we'd automatically have to get along. And as it turned out, we did, so it was a bit of a fluke. And then we just start drawing on tables. Eventually, Mark decided that, yeah, we're going to put something in the student newspaper. We both write, we both draw, we both ink, we both do covers, we both do everything, really. Although if you had to sort of define one thing, I generally tend to draw Stump, Mark tends to draw Bug.
The Melbourne Science Fiction Club was formed, I think, in 1953, and one of the main features that we've got here is the library. By the way, if anybody wants to come down here, we're at 74 Melville Road, West Brunswick, and we meet here every Friday night at 8 o'clock. We've got a lot which have been donated by members, or sometimes publishers send us review copies as well. This is Time, which is the Australian SF news magazine. This is edited by Alan Stewart, who's also secretary of the Melbourne Science Fiction Club. This is just a cover I did last year that wraps around. Big traffic jam. I've been doing a few of these lately. This just a traffic jam, and I've hidden a few odds and sods in it, like there's the Batmobile, and there's the Ghostbusters car, and there's Chitty Chitty Bang Bang in there, and a few flying saucers and things hidden in the traffic jam and this sort of stuff. I like that sort of stuff. Just sort of little tiny jokes that you might miss the first couple of times you look at the thing.
Bug and Stump at the moment, it's going to go for 11 issues, so we've got one more issue after the next one. Then we're going to start doing the Chris Weil issues, which are penciled by Chris Weil. They're 3 issues, that's a separate story arc. And then we're going to start again. The first issues, we were still finding our feet. We'd had 18 months worth of experience in the student newspaper, and that was invaluable, but we still feel that it could be better, the first few issues. The storyline needs work, there's a lot of superfluous stuff here and there. We didn't know the direction that the whole comic was going. Now we've got a clearer direction, and so now we can write the whole story as a one body, as it were. The story's going to be significantly different, so that if you've already read it, you can go ahead and read it again and you won't be bored. It'll be different enough to the old readers don't like it, but it'll be more concise. So we thought if we're going to try and hit the international market, we're going to have something halfway decent. Because they've got like 50 comics coming out each week. You know, if you're going to compete, you can't go in there half-assed, I suppose.
Internationally or with America?
Well, I suppose it's the same thing, really. Probably start off in America. I wouldn't mind going to, not many people talk about it, but I wouldn't mind going into Asia. The sort of Indonesia, Thailand.
These strange creatures, well, most of them come out of the back end of my head, sometimes during dreams, sometimes just observing and putting things together in a little bit differently to what people normally see them. A lot of it's just good fun, exploring an idea, taking it as far as it'll go. I think exploring extremes is very important. My wife bought a computer And for my birthday, she gave me a copy of an advanced Dungeons and Dragons computer game, The Eye of the Beholder. Then I got stuck into computer games, and basically ever since that's what I've been doing in my spare time. So I've also published a diary called The Diary of a Doom Junkie, and that chronicles for 1 month my addiction to playing 3D action perspective computer games.
Well, he was sort of created. I just sort of did a doodle, and there he was. Actually, the whole idea was like he was actually standing in the wind, and the hair was going up everywhere, and I thought, fuck, that looks alright. You know, kept the hair up all the time. Like he was supposed to just have it hanging down. But, yeah, I liked the way it was. Yeah, the story evolved out of that drawing. I did a couple other drawings at the same time, and I thought, oh, that will go well with it. And from there, I had a few rough ideas. Like in the first issue, at the end, where the witch has to be sort of, you know, her house has to burn down or whatever in order to break the spell. That actually came out of a book that I read about witchcraft.
I've got my own fanzine which consists entirely of just small single frame cartoons. I call it Silly Yellows, and it's just, I send it off to editors, and when they've got a spare place in their fanzine they can just plonk it in. And I've got a cartoon series called Space-Time Buccaneers, which is sort of this ongoing story I've been doing for about 6 years now, just about time-travelling pirates. One of the characters I've got in Space-Time Buccaneers is a woman from the future, and she's got the ultimate yuppie shoes. She's got a pair of runners that have artificial intelligence, but because they're yuppie shoes, they talk like yuppies. They always talk about squash and power business meetings and business breakfast.
I think it was Dylan Naylor, who does the Fireballs comics, was offered. He was asked if he could do a TISM comic, but unfortunately he was pretty busy at the time doing Fireballs comics, and he knew that both Mark and myself were mad TISM fans, so he handballed it to us. Now the first comic we basically wrote, did everything ourselves, and TISM management was actually quite impressed at how well it sold. They were thinking of it as a marketing. I didn't care if they lost money or not. Like, again, we both did bits. I did the bits where Ron Hitler Barassi talks. Mark did the bits where he actually does the poems. They ended up wanting to do a second one. Not to make money, but just because to raise the profile of the band. In order to distribute it, we first printed up the copies. We went to speak to lawyers because we knew that there were problematic areas. So we took a copy to the distributor and said, look, take a look at this, have a look through it, and tell us if it's okay. If it's okay, we'll distribute it through you. A week later, we get a call saying, yep, not a problem, send us 5,000. So we sent them up. 2 weeks later, we get a phone call, frantic phone call from the guy who we deal with, saying, it's been banned in Queensland, and I suspect it's going to be banned everywhere else. Apparently a managing director or some executive like that had a look at it and went apeshit. They sent out a letter to recall all the news agencies, yeah. So I think we did lose some sales, but we didn't lose money on it. At the end of the day, there was a profit. I think we sold 40%, which is, you know, ridiculously high for an Australian comic. So, and apparently in comic shops, it's one of the highest selling Australian comics ever. A comic artist who doesn't read comics, I started reading comics after I started doing comics.
You must read science fiction or something.
Oh shit, yeah, I gobble it up.
There's other comics that just aren't published here that I used to read as a kid. The guy who drew the Smurfs, he actually did another thing that the Smurfs came from, which was a really good series. That was all medieval kind of art as well.
Did you read a lot of comics in Holland?
Yeah, stacks. I mean, it's pretty big over there. I mean, my uncle's always had a lot of comics, and my grandfather read comics as well. So I used to read all their comics. Like they had Blueberry and stuff like that. My grandfather. Yeah, he read them till he died.
A lot of things are influential. Mostly day-to-day experiences, dreams. I don't have a television, so I don't get to see much in the way of Ren and Stimpy cartoons anymore.
Any artists you've got who are favourites?
Particularly Joan Miró, the Spanish surrealist that worked in the 1920s. His work was very influential. I liked his simplicity, his use of colour, mostly primary colours, and just very aesthetic shapes. I do a lot of trades with people in Melbourne. Most of the comics are very personal, which is terrific because you actually get to glimpse what goes on inside other people's heads, and that's really a valuable experience. Autobiographic stuff's terrific because that way you really get to know the person. A lot of my stuff is autobiographic. I look at some of the things that I drew, say, a few years ago, and I say, oh my God, that's the stage of my life I was at then. Thank God I've moved on, but also thank God I recorded it. I don't like the idea of commercial artists being called comics artists because they're basically pandering to a market. And I believe that a comic is a very, very personal means of expression, and they're quite often the best ones, the amateur ones, where people really do say what they feel about things genuinely.
You've been distributing through newsagents. How's that working?
Oh, it sucks shit.
Yeah, it's not working.
No, the Australian system is all sale or return. You give them 5,000 comics, and they will give you the money for whatever's sold. And everything that doesn't get sold, they pulp it, or you get it in such shocking condition that it's just not worth it, so you give them away. So there's this huge wastage of paper and material, and it's also a big heartache. So it's not nice knowing that, you know, 2,000 of your comics are being pulped. If you're starting out, then the consignment system is better because then people are more likely to have your stuff in the shop. If for a first issue, they're more likely to have a first issue in a shop if they know that they don't have to pay for it if it doesn't sell. Yeah. So for starting out it's good, but once you actually start getting rolling, I mean, we're 9 issues down the track, it's not helping us at all. In Australia, for news agencies, I don't see them changing at all. If anything, they're going to go worse. There's so many Australian comics coming out, the distributors are getting a bit antsy about it. They don't want to know. We went to see NDD, which takes Marvel and DC and all that sort of stuff. They didn't want to know about us. Yeah, we'd won X number of awards and all that sort of stuff. We're Australia's favourite comic and blah blah blah. I don't give two shits as far as they're concerned. Yeah, there's a meeting every month here in Melbourne, and I keep saying, yep, I've got it in my diary, I'm going to go, and it's like, oh fuck, I've got a deadline tomorrow, I can't go, or something like that. But as far as that goes, I suppose there's the OzCon, and every year everyone just gets together, has a great party, and it's great because there's actually some sort of feeling of community. But unfortunately, like you said, there's so many people, and everyone's got their own commitments. No one can work on a comic full time in Australia and pay the way. People are getting more and more excited about comics, and the people who are doing it, they're getting more and more serious about it. They're not just piss-farting around anymore. When you talk to people at comic conventions, they don't just come up to you these days and say, oh, I can't draw a hand. These days they come to you and say, who do I speak to about distribution? You know, what's my print run supposed to be? They're asking you technical stuff.
I actually like Platinum Grit. And well, since I put this out, I didn't actually know much about local stuff, but since I put this out, I got in contact with a lot of guys, so you know, they've influenced me in a way as well, and I've bought their stuff and I've got hold of their stuff, you know, like yourself and Dylan and the guys from Bug and Stump. I mean, you know, you sort of see them occasionally and do stuff for them. I've done a few scripts of Dylan's as well. I'm working on one now, but I love it. I've always been doing it, and like this is the first project that I've actually published, self-published. So before that, I just did it for my own enjoyment. So I probably, even if I didn't publish this, I'd probably still be doing it. But it's just that somebody said, you know, you should bring it out, you should try it, and I did. Phil Barlow, I sort of understand where he's coming from because of his beliefs in. You know, how there's some sort of outer universe, some hand pushing down on us, making us do these things. He believes that something's controlling him to create this new universe that he's created. You know, I don't look at my stuff that way. I just think it's something I've made up, and I know in a way I've got control over it. And
can you tell us about this beautiful portrait of Ethel the Aardvark up there? Where did you find that gem?
That was actually found by another artist, Kerry Volkova, when she was at a fete. Why anybody would sit down and paint a picture of a sleeping aardvark, we've no idea, but it only cost her $1 or $2, so